Football for me, it means people. Everyone who's involved for the right reasons. They want to play because they love the game, they want to be involved, and it brings connection between everyone, whether it's standing on the sides, whether it's in the crowd, just watching and not playing.
And with football being for everyone, whether you're a coach, a player, an aspiring player for the future, someone seeking a scholarship, a teacher, a youth worker, a professional, a volunteer, someone seeking to get involved in the game, a volunteer parent, whether they're reflecting on their journey and how they can understand their grassroots team, an aspiring academy coach yourself, no matter what and no matter where you're listening, this podcast is really for you. On the Reflective Coach podcast, there are so many wonderful guests that feature on the podcast, whether this is former professionals, current professionals, and professionals of all backgrounds within the Coaching Insight series that really inspire, understand, support, and are reflective amongst this journey as they share their own insights, experiences, their own journey, their own reflections, strategies, insights, and other stories into the Reflective Coach podcast. Each week features a new guest, and each new guest brings something new to the podcast. I've been so lucky to have so many wonderful guests on, and you can really listen to all the episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and Podcast Addict, with continuous updates on Twitter and LinkedIn. By subscribing, commenting, following, engaging with all the posts amongst social media, you can really keep up to date with all the episodes.
Yeah. Well, that is what's so great about coaching, right? It's like you never stop developing, you never stop learning, and the players you're working with, every year they're also developing, they're changing. There's different type of players that come in, different type of people, which is so fun about our job, right? It's you get to work with such a wide variety of individuals, and that leadership, you just never stop working on it. And you always hear coaches talk about you never stop working on your team's culture. I think as coaches, we can never stop working on us as leaders and how we lead these programs and lead these student athletes. Because once we stop working on ourselves in that environment, how are we expected to properly guide? It's such an important time, I believe, and the person I am today and the type of coach I've become, the type of aunt, the type of daughter, the type of friend, like the type of individual I've become, I really owe a lot of it to how my coaches supported me and pushed me and molded me. Getting ready for season report dates a week from today, so just getting prepared.
Oh yeah, so a lot of reports to do, or?
No, just our team gets started a week from today, so I'm just getting the schedule organized, getting travel organized, getting practice organized. So just a lot of organizing this week to get ready for next week.
So an easy transition then to go into things and then, hit the ground running as soon as you're back next week then, by the seams of it?
Yes, that's what we hope for. Always an easy transition, hopefully. So we'll see how it goes.
Brilliant, sounds good. Yeah, it should be a good one, definitely.
Yeah. So how are you? How's your day been since it's 9 p.m.?
Yeah, 9 p.m. Yeah, it's been all right. I'm actually on annual leave, so I just finished teaching on Friday. So I'm actually on annual leave, so it fits in nicely to sort of get some more time to sort of relax, but also continue to fit in the pod and spend some more time doing this kind of stuff. So it's all good.
Cool. Good. Well, no, I'm excited. I hope I give you some good stuff.
No, I'm definitely sure you will. Yeah, obviously you do a lot of great things. You're a head coach, you've got vast experience behind you, so I'm sure that you will.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Keep that going.
No problems at all. That's no problems. I'm sure that it'd be great to start off the episode by you introducing yourself, who you are and what your experience is.
Yeah, no, I can definitely do that. So, I have been coaching now for, I'm assuming, almost 15 years around there. I don't want to age myself too much, but I started my coaching career at Michigan State, my alma mater. I was the volunteer coach there for 2 years. I got a lot of great experience, coached with the coaches that coached me, which was always very, very entertaining. And I gained a lot of knowledge in that aspect, in the sense that, I think as a college player, you always wonder what your coaches are doing behind the scenes. Like, oh, all you do is coach. Like, no, that's definitely not what college coaching is. There's so many different layers and levels to it. So I learned a lot in those first 2 years, which was great. The staff there was a big reason to why I got into college coaching, and I can forever thank them and be appreciative of them. So my time at Michigan State was really valuable as a coach, not only as a player. Right from there, I went to Olivet College and I became the assistant coach there. It's a small D3 school, a very different environment from, where I played in the Big Ten and coached the Big Ten, and then went there and I learned so much, what it takes at that level to be successful. And I met a lot of great people, worked with a lot of great people, and then made my way to Western Michigan University, where I was the assistant there for 3 years, which was an amazing experience. We won a couple of championships, which was a lot of fun. I think I became really confident in myself as to kind of what the coach I wanted to become, which was really fun. And I really enjoyed that part of my process. And at that point in time, being the assistant for 3 years, I started to really want to develop the feelings of being a head coach myself. So when Nate, the head coach at Western, moved on, I was able and lucky enough to take over the program at Western Michigan to become the head coach there for 2 years, where you learn a lot. I think it's always something where you learn things you want to do when you're an assistant, things maybe you want to do differently as an assistant. You learn about the level of commitment and sacrifice, and then having, the experience of being a head coach. Definitely learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, what I need in a program and in my assistants. And I really enjoyed my time there at Western Michigan. So I spent a total of 5 years at Western, then had the opportunity to be the assistant coach at Notre Dame. So I took that opportunity in the mindset of, I love everything I was doing at Western. I love the players we were bringing in. I think we would have been really successful. I just knew that I wanted to get to the highest level possible as a head coach in the Power Five. And so I believed from my personal growth that I needed to put myself in a more challenging environment and learn and play against the best in the world and best in the country when it comes to players and coaches. And I knew getting to the ACC and having that opportunity as the assistant at Notre Dame, that was going to set me up to potentially take over my own Power 5 program. And now I'm here at Oregon State, and I'm a head coach of a P5 team, and I'm loving it.
Well,
so there you go. I hope that was a good rundown.
No, that's excellent. That's such a great intro and a pathway in terms of where you've come from and how you've gone about it, as well as seeing that transition from player to coach, from assistant then to head coach, what you've wanted to bring to a program, those learning experiences whilst you step up into that head coach role, and obviously those challenges in that environment and what you've wanted from it. So, that's a wonderful introduction into who you are and what you're doing. And, it wraps up nicely in terms of where you're at now and the current point where you're looking at not only the future as well, but whereby you can reflect and look back as well. So, there's so much within that, and obviously, transitioning from player to assistant isn't always the easiest of transitions. How did that go for you when you sort of had to look at, moving into that pathway?
Yeah, it was, I don't want to say it was seamless, but because, you're starting to coach your friends and your teammates. So that was always really interesting, going from, teammate to then, telling them what to do on the field from a coaching role. I think I was also in a really good situation because I was a captain at Michigan State. So I was already kind of seen as someone that the team respected, which I really appreciated. And I never took that for granted. And then, unfortunately, my senior year at State, I tore my ACL right when conference started. So right when that happened, my coaches did a really good job of transitioning me into a coaching position. Once I was able to get back on my feet after surgery, they were bringing me into the office and having me be a part of meetings and, doing film with players. Like, they kept me involved, which was really what opened my eyes up to coaching, and that I loved it. And it was a way for me to still be a part of the team and feel valued. And then once, the season ended and it was time for me to kind of decide what I wanted to do, the staff was basically like, you're doing a really good job with this. We know you still want to play, so why not stick around for a year, potentially try to play, but also like be our volunteer and figure out what the coaching world has to offer you and what you can offer it. So that transition kind of already started when I already was a player, which made it a lot easier when it was like said and done. Okay, now I'm part of the staff.
And obviously, when you went up into that coaching role and that position, as you said, you were coaching with friends and coaches that had coached you. So that can be quite a strange time as well, because you have to sort of move from one perspective to another and be seen in a different light. So I went back to teach in a school where I went as a student. So a lot of the teachers that I was working with taught me. So to sort of transition in from being a student to staff and realising some of the staff, how I upset them as a student and had to rebuild some relationships was certainly interesting. But I can completely understand and emphasize in terms of how that may have went. But it's great that you can sort of fit into that narrative whereby you can work with those who you're familiar with. That sets you up on your coaching journey from those you've looked up to how, as you said, look at the intricacies of what the college world is, how that looks behind the scenes, what they do, and what's more away from the field as well. So it sounds like it's been shaped really well, not by strategic planning, but something that's fallen into place and has allowed it to form into something so great where you're at now.
Yeah, no, I think I'm really lucky. When I look back at my career as a player, getting to college, and then how I've gotten this opportunity to be a college coach, I mean, it was hard and it was challenging, but in the best ways possible to set me up to how I am a coach now and who I am as a coach and why I coach. The opportunities that I fell into because of certain scenarios or situations and the people that were surrounding me, I'm just extremely grateful because I know it's not like that for everybody. And I just had a lot of people looking out for me, and those people are still in my life, and I'm just greatly appreciative of them because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the people that helped me get here. And there's a lot of people early on in my coaching career, in college, in club, my teammates, my friends, that really supported me with this. And I don't think I'd be here if I didn't have their support, including my family. Because when you start coaching, you're grinding. You're not really sure what you're making, where you're getting it from, how you're doing it. But to have the support of my family with me as well, I mean, it meant the world. So I'm really grateful.
I love that, and I'm sure that they're going to take much away from that, and certainly know that as well. The coaching world is cutthroat as well. It's not always the easiest worlds to be in. So when you've got that sort of recognition and people around you, whereby you have that support, you can have those conversations, and you're put in a position because of them, and you're shaping what you're doing as a result of the environment and people that you've been impacted by. It sounds really insightful as well as empowering in terms of what's led you to where you are today, and being able to give back to those people, which is great for them as well in terms of that connected journey which you've been able to form.
No, I think you said it like early on. I was lucky enough to coach alongside people that have coached me growing up, because I spent my whole life in Michigan, playing for some of the best coaches that I've ever worked under, and then now being able to coach alongside them or compete against them or talk to them when it comes to recruiting some of their club players and having those connections. It's been really beneficial just in my journey to know that I have those people that I can rely on, and they have that with me too. I think the amount of respect we have for each other, and know that I can always call them, and they now see me as that as well, and not just their player that they only see as a little nugget running around. I think it's been really influential in how I want to continue developing, because I also don't want to let them down. They believed in me to put me on this path, and so I just never want to let them down. And at the end of the day, if I can, go to bed knowing that I gave my full effort into this profession and influence the lives of the kids I'm working with the way that my coaches did with me, then I can sleep well at night. And that has a lot to do with the coaches I've ran into throughout my entire life in this sport.
I really love that, and I've just noted down the second a minute that you said that, because I think that's such a wonderful quote and reflection to really take away, because that is so true to its nature in terms of what you say. And there's so much within that as well, because as you say, it's continued development and where you want to go. So how do you want to continue developing? Where do you want to go with it? What's in store for Lauren?
Yeah. Well, that is what's so great about coaching, right? It's like you never stop developing, you never stop learning. And the players you're working with, every year, they're also developing, they're changing. There's different type of players that come in, different type of people, which is so fun about our job, right? As you get to work with such a wide variety of individuals and their beliefs and how they were raised and, how they even develop. And I think that's what keeps us on our toes, but that's what the highlight is of our job. It's every day is very different, which is so much fun, and it's because of the people you're surrounded by. So I think, I never want to stop learning about the game. It's always changing, and I think that's what one of my favorite parts of it is. When I've stopped learning about the game, then I've stopped doing my job for these players and for this program. So I always want to keep learning about the game, different ways that you can tactically change things and adjust things. It's just a fun puzzle that you get to create with your program. So that's always a really fun part of the developmental piece. But I think just with me continuing to develop, I think that leadership, you just never stop working on it. And you always hear coaches talk about you never stop working on your team's culture. I think as coaches, we can never stop working on us as leaders and how we lead these programs and lead these student athletes. Because once we stop working on ourselves in that environment, how are we expected to properly guide student athletes at the ages of 18 to 22? So as much as they're developing as humans, we need to continue to do that ourselves. And I think that's what sets us up for success. And I think just the coaching world of it all, and I want to make Oregon State competitive. I want us to be a program that people know, and when they hear Oregon State women's soccer, that's something that's in the back of their mind. Like, we don't want to run into them. And I think this program, we can do it. And it's a lot of hard work has been put into this team, and the players have been putting in for the past 2 years. I'm really excited to just focus on this fall and what's next for this program, and that's all I'm worried about.
I was going to ask, why do you coach? But you seem to have answered that already without me having to ask that question, because you said you coach for a purpose and coach for a reason earlier on. So that was one of my questions, why do you coach? But building on that and what you're going through, and as you say, building on that program where you're taking it, it sounds like, all the right reasons as to why you're coaching, that approach, that philosophy, that outlook, that framework which you develop, how you want to keep developing and evolving, what you bring in that leadership platform, what you're able to develop into that program. And it sounds just brilliant in terms of what you've been doing, and that sort of outlook in terms of your own progress for how you can shape people as well, because without shaping yourself and progressing, then you're not shaping them with what they need and want as well.
Yeah, and I think it's something, again, I look back to when I first started getting into coaching. It was my time at Michigan State, and like, not to give too much information about myself, but I wasn't the perfect person. I'm definitely not a perfect person now, but my college years, like, I hit adversity. I was struggling with myself and what I wanted to do with my life, who I was, and a lot of different things that college athletes and college aged individuals go through at that time in our lives. It's such an important time, I believe, and the person I am today and the type of coach I've become, the type of aunt, the type of daughter, the type of friend, like the type of individual I've become, I really owe a lot of it to how my coaches supported me and pushed me and molded me when I was at Michigan State. And that coaching staff, like I said, I wasn't perfect, and they knew how to hold me accountable. They knew how to challenge me, not only on the field, but as a person, which I needed. And I became a better human being because of them. And geez, if I can do that with people that I work with now, yeah, that's life altering stuff. And it's really fulfilling. And so when I say I have to be able to do that, I have to be really confident in myself, in the aspect of, like, I know I'm not always right, and I know that I have a lot of growing to do. So as long as I'm continuing to work on myself, then I feel comfortable challenging my student athletes to do the same. And if I stop doing that, how am I supposed to ask them to do that? So that's something that, I find really exciting about my job, because it does challenge me and it holds me accountable to do it. Because if I'm saying this to you now, shoot, I better go do it later on. So it's fun. It's really fun, and it makes every day really special.
And that's it right there, making it fun, making it special, recording those memories, but holding yourself accountable, whereby you can bring that leadership and really develop a program that's competitive in terms of where you are, whilst shaping the athletes that you're working upon, whilst continues to develop yourself along the route. So that's a perfect sum up of what coaching is. It's been a great podcast, and cheers for chatting.
Yeah, no, that was fun. It's great, and no, it's a great job. So I'm really, really lucky. I'm a very lucky human.
Absolutely, and it's great in terms of what you're doing and where you're going to take things as well. And it'd be great to sort of see what you've done over the last 2 years, what you do this year, and then how that looks in terms of the future, whereby you say you want to make it more competitive and shape that program even further. So, it's a great opportunity whereby you can shape it now, but also have the outlook towards the future, and then get to a point whereby you can look back and go, do you know what? This is what I've achieved over the last 6 years. This is how it's progressed and moved on. And it's the same then for your athletes in terms of how they do that as well. Because, we can look long term, but if you look at just this fall and look at the season, if you start in August Where are the athletes by November? And then you're reviewing them again then in February, and then again at the end of the year. So if they've had 3 review points, that's those sort of stepping stones in, right, this is how we can break it down, this is how we can look. And rather than just looking at the 3 years, we can look at just a year ahead, because sometimes we lose ourselves by looking so far into the future, we're forgetting about what we can do here and now as well. So just pulling back and sometimes slowing down and looking at short-term strategy might actually be better than long-term strategy at some strands whilst we look at it.
Yeah. I think it's something always intriguing, right? It's like you need to know where you want to go or where you're trying to go. So you have to have that in the back of your head. But like you said, a lot of people, especially in these roles, like you get so caught up in that end goal that you're not even focusing on what you're doing every single day, or like you have certain points that you know you want to hit, but like it's that nitty-gritty detail of the everyday of it, focusing on getting better the next day with knowing where you want to end up. And I think we have done a good job here, our staff and our players. Our players have been great with it, realizing, hey, where we've been and where we have been, it hasn't been the level where we know we want to end up. So that differentiation of where we are to where we want to end up as a group, it's having the team understand that and seeing we need to change our actions to help us get there. And they're focusing more on the everyday actions with the mindset of what is our end goal. And it's our job as a staff to hold them accountable to that end goal, but by doing so, by making sure their everyday actions are what they have set for each other. And I think that's been really fun with our group, is the fact that they really have really changed how they see their potential as a group. Whereas 2 years ago, it's like the talk of that end goal was something that they didn't even believe in. And now it's like every day has gotten so much better because they are genuinely believing in that end goal. So it's like you said, you don't want to get so caught up on where am I going, what am I doing, but you have to have it, right? You have to have some type of something you're working toward, but it's the everyday that we believe in here, and focusing on that is what's going to help us get to that end goal.
And whilst looking at that end goal and those actions, then what sort of actions do you hold accountable for your players, and do you expect to see from them every day then?
Yeah, well, I think you can run a bunch of different programs that have a lot of different rules. I'll tell you, we don't really have a lot of rules. We have maybe 4, and it's like in the mindset of like this is the bare like minimum, and so like this is what we expect of you, but the rest, other than those rules where it's like, hey, if you mess this up, you're going to be in trouble or there's going to be an issue. The more we talk about our expectations and our standards. So, it's something about like, it's really easy to say that an expectation of our program is to be competitive, right? I think you can ask any college program out there, they're going to say we want to be ultra competitive. So like, yeah, that is an expectation, a standard. But what we really focus on is what are the actions that we expect to see from you every single practice or every single weight room session along the lines of that keep us competitive or that look competitive. So that action is, at the end of each session or end of each drill, we say, what's the score? And you guys look at each other and no one has any idea. Well, then are you truly competitive? Because then that means you don't care if you're winning or not. So then it's like, okay, so when we set up teams, like, are you saying someone needs to keep score? Or do you have in the back of your head how many goals you've scored or how many shots you've stopped? Things along those lines. So like the expectation, the standard is we're ultra competitive, but we focus on then what does that actually look like or mean in a practice to be that competitive teammate? We also, like, one of our rules is like you have to be ready at least 5 minutes before, ready to go. And so then, but even with that, we focus on the action behind it. So what does it, in your guys' mind as a team, when you look at your teammate, how does she look ready to go 5 minutes before practice? And it's her cleats are on, her shin guards are on, she's laced up, she's on her feet, she's kicking the ball around with the teammate. Those are the actions that you look for to make sure that you're ready to go. So we have these different things we talk about, like communication, just all the different standards and expectations. Like, how are you in the community when we're doing community outreach or community service? Or how do you communicate with your professors, your academic advisors? And then we talk about those actions behind those things, and that's what helps us keep in the right line of progression to where we want this program to go.
Again, so insightful, and I think that's really good in terms of how you hold them accountable, but whilst developing those sort of life skills as well as those expectations on the pitch, and off the pitch as well. Because if the player's not ready without their boots or shin pads on, then I've seen players whereby we're ready to go out for a warm up, and it's like, why haven't you got your training top on? And they're just sat in the change room. Like, you should have that expectation ready to go, and we should. As soon as bang, I say right out we go. You should be ready to go in terms of that. And I love that point as well. Actions we expect to see from you, and what does that look like in practice for that competitive teammate, or to be that competitive teammate. And I think that's really important, because as you say there, when you're asking the scoreline of a player maybe following an SSG, and they come back and say, "Oh right, I'm not sure," or "We lost score." I think then, are you really being competitive is a great question. And sometimes you might hear coaches go, "Oh, score doesn't matter, we'll just continue with this SSG and I want to get this out." So when they go by the score doesn't matter, how would you perceive or take that if you were standing next to them or observing that session?
Well, I think it's really what is a priority of yours in that session. Like for us, this off season, it was a really big priority for us to build the understanding of being competitive. I think it's something where, like you said, it's really easy to say you're a competitive individual, but I think at this level, you have to learn how to win consistently here. It's not something you can just roll the ball out and have a good day out on the field and you're going to win. Like, no, some of the best teams that you come up against, like you can be one of the top 5 teams in the country. You have to work to win. I don't care who you're playing. Upsets happen for a reason. You have to learn to win at this level. It's something that is a learned skill. I genuinely believe it. Now, it doesn't work out every single time, but it's something that you really need to learn how to do, especially transitioning from high school to college. And I think this team and this program, we got to a point where we were saying it so often, but we weren't showing it, and those actions weren't supporting it. And what we've discovered as a staff was maybe the team just doesn't know how to be competitive, and maybe they think that what they're doing is competitive. So when a coach would say like a score doesn't matter, like I think that's their priority in the session. Maybe the priority in the session is, they're putting a score line behind it to give the team something to focus on in the sense of making it a game. But they're more so focusing on the quality of service or the quality of combinations or the speed of things. So maybe that's not a priority to them. For us, where this program is right now, it's a high priority to us. And I just tend to think sometimes that when you make it a winning and losing situation, it just you tend to just be a little bit more bought in. But in my genuine belief is I would love to get this program to a point where they don't need that to compete. So I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think just how are you prioritizing it, and where's your program at a certain time? And I'm talking strictly, college aged. I am not talking about the little nuggets that, hey, maybe that is not a priority right now. So that's what I'm more focused on.
And I think that's such an interesting concept as well in terms of what are your priorities and how does that look? Because sometimes coaches may be lost or get confused as to where they're at in the season because, wherever they are on their journey, coaching can lead us down to a platform or lead us into an area whereby we might get confused or lost to where we are or what the purpose is. And sometimes we might be overcomplicating things and put different aspects into a program, and we're building all these components and therefore we're losing sight of what we truly want to achieve. So just by setting out some priorities means that we can streamline and really get what we need and want out of it, whereby we can then strategically plan and then build upon what we need and what we want and where we're going, which is exactly what you said there. But when it comes down to those priorities, say you're delivering over the course of a season, and those priorities have changed somewhat, say 3 or 4 times. You've looked at whether you wanted to be a developing team into a competitive, into a team whereby you're looking at moulding competitiveness and development to transitioning for players who are staying next year and players who are leaving. So therefore, those priorities might have changed 4 times. Do you think that's a good thing to have change in that, or is it better to have that consistency within the priorities, whereby then that message, as you say, can then be really affirmed in terms of those actionable points that can be delivered over a course of a season?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I think it's the way that we look at least. I think the priorities change in the aspect of where our program is at that point in time. So if you look at our team now compared to 2 years ago when we first took over the program, I think our priorities were very, very different 2 years ago. And in the fact that, we were rebuilding a culture, we were transitioning things. And I think for the past year and a half, that was our priority in the fact of, what are the expectations? What does it mean to be a Beaver? What type of people do we believe are going to be successful here? Like, what are the expectations of how you should be as a teammate, as a person? Just all these things where that culture was a really, really important piece of it. And then, cut to this off season, the priority became, okay, we've worked really hard on this culture now, but now we're to the point where our players love spending time with each other. They are good friends. They care about each other. They do work hard, all these things. But then there's that competitive culture that you need to combine the two, right? You have the fun, loving, enjoy each other culture. Then you have the competitive culture, especially at our level. You need this piece, or what are we doing here? So, like, being able to combine that. And so this off season's focus was taking that competitive piece and blending it with the culture piece to make it one large umbrella of a culture. And for us, that priority changed because of where we were at as a program. And we believe this fall now, we have veterans that have been in this program for 2 years now that truly understand that can continue to pull the group along. Fast forward to another year down the road, those veterans are graduating, and now we might be doing more of the pulling, and our focus will shift again as a coaching staff. So, like, when I think of like a large scheme, like a large scale timeline of our focus and priorities, that's what I think of. I think it really changes. I think it's okay to change year to year. Now, when it comes to weekly, bi-weekly focuses, that's always changing, right? You run into injuries, you run into illness. Maybe some players aren't working out like you thought they were going to work out. So now you're kind of focusing on different priorities, just depending on how things are moving forward and how they're progressing. I think change of priorities is a good thing, because that means that you're always keeping up with the times and you're always developing. I think when you come across, and this is something that I think a lot of coaches run into, and I'm one of them, or used to be one of them. Once you become really comfortable in anything, that's when that dip is coming, right? Like, you need to stay on your toes, and you need to constantly be challenging the group that you're leading, or that's where you find the inconsistencies of success. And so I think the ever-changing focus is really good. But you always, in my mind, you want to keep things consistent. But if you're not challenging and pushing and trying to bring new things to the table, then you're not gonna develop, and you're gonna find those inconsistencies of success.
And I think that's such a great breakdown in terms of how you can look at that in terms of inconsistencies to consistency, what that success, how that brings, looking at that on a weekly to monthly and how those priorities change, but then looking at on how that can change year to year in terms of progression, and how that challenges and develops a team from that, how that can be in terms of year to year. So I think that's a fantastic breakdown in terms of how you look at that and build that. And whilst you want that competitiveness to be at the forefront in terms of what you're doing and how you get that across in teams, the quality of team might be different in terms of this year to next year, so it might increase, it might decrease. So there's many variable factors that come into play, as well as you say, other factors, injury, players not being available, illness, etc. And therefore you have to change priority depending on the scope of what's in front of you. But whilst you have, say, that on a season to season, and you're looking at setting up your priorities, whilst that competitiveness is still there and at the forefront, do you hit the ground running with competitiveness in terms of what you expect from the players as they come into a program, or do you gradually build them in and then get them up to a competitive level in terms of what you then expect from them at a certain point to maintain and build that over the course of a season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I mean, my belief, at least, again, I speak for me, I think it's a really important piece to be consistent as a coach in general. The players need to know what to expect from you. Now, obviously, is that always perfect? No. I mean, life happens. You never know what's going to happen. But I think as coaches and as leaders, consistency is really, really important. So when you ask, do we hit the ground running? Yeah, because that's what my team before in the off season knows. So yeah, and it's their job, the returner's job, as well as us as staff, to inform the newcomers, like, hey, these are our expectations, and while before they even honestly commit to us, These are the expectations if you're going to be an Oregon State Beaver, and if you're going to be a part of this program. This is how we are every day. This is what we expect from you. This is what your teammates expect from you, so that when day one comes, it's not like a slap in their face, like, I didn't know what I signed up for, right? So like that consistency piece, I believe, is a really, really big point for head coaches and coaches in general, because the players need to know what to expect from you, and you don't want to surprise them. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes it is good to like throw a wrench in there and like really challenge them, but like they need to be able to rely on you. And if you're inconsistent with how you are every day, they can't rely on you. And you can't, challenge them in the ways that you need to, because they just don't know what to expect from you. So, long answer short, yeah, we hit the ground running. Is it perfect every time? No. I mean, some people grasp onto it a lot faster than others, but I believe if you have a solid group and a solid foundation, the returners are already preparing those newcomers before they even get to day one. And I think that's what a lot of like programs do when they have captains practices or like earlier report dates as teams before the coaches can start with them. That's something that I know our players right now, when they're doing team workouts without us, because obviously we can't, they're making sure that the newcomers understand what it's like at practice and what the expectations are, so that on day one when they're with us, nothing's a surprise to them.
I love that, and I've had that experience as well, whereby I've been in the academy setting, and when we have what's called like a shadow squad. So the shadow squad is sort of like a development centre, whereby players come in, they perform at that level, and if they're good enough, they might get handpicked to come up to the academy, and then they might have the opportunity to train with, say, the elite squads then. And therefore, when you bring a few players up from the shadow squad into the academy, you're looking at, say, your veteran players or your high quality players or players who've been with you for a period of time, and you're looking at them to set the benchmark, to set the standard and principle of literally going, right, you're in with the big time now. This is what we expect from you, because this is a big step up from that program to this program. We want to be competitive. You're in the elite group. You're here for a reason. The point is because you want a scholarship and to get that contract like these academy players. So whilst you're coming in and there's that development pathway, you now have to step up and alter that mindset to therefore be ready to step up and perform with these players. Because if you're not ready to do it, then why are you on the program? Or if you're not ready to do it, you might not be coming out successful at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think that's something too. That's where you start to maybe shift sometimes the priorities or the expectations, just depending upon how veteran is your group, how new is your group. Do you have a class of 12 freshmen coming in and you only have 9 to 10 upperclassmen? Like that in our belief is something where you slightly shift the prioritization, like how you prioritize things. Wow, let me struggle with that word more. But I think it's something where, it is the groups, like the locker room's job to make sure the team is always on the same page. Like, we don't know as coaches what's happening all the time in locker rooms. We have no idea. And that's okay, as long as the team has a good hold of it, right? And that's something we talk to a lot with our captains or our leadership council is like, if you guys can handle it, handle it. Like, we trust you. You're part of this group for a reason. Involve us when you need to. And I think that's something where is like where we are now compared to 2 years ago, where we are now, that group of individuals for our team, captains, leadership council, even those that aren't even on it, they get it. And they're now at the point where it's like, we do not want anybody coming in here and messing up all the hard work we've put in for the past 2 years. So like they are making sure the newcomers understand what's up. And that's awesome. Like that's fun to be around. So, but saying that, you never know what it's going to be like when this slew of seniors graduate and if it's still going to be there. So you have to reevaluate at the end of each year. But if you're not doing that anyway, then what are we doing as coaches? You have to always reevaluate all the time and reflect on how things go and did it work well? I mean, we should be doing it after sessions, after meetings, like, did this work well? How can we adjust it? How can we make it better? And that's something that I think is a really fun part of our job too. So
I love that, and that is the fun part of the job, and that's the fun part of coaching. And even as we're having this conversation, I'm absolutely thriving off it, and I'm going, why is my mind at my most peak at 25 to 10 at night rather than, where it was at 1 o'clock this afternoon when I was sat there with absolutely no energy or fight to get anywhere. But I suppose that's on the back of just annual leave. But that's the point where you can have those sort of conversations and you're thinking, and it can lift you up to sort of go, right, where are we going? How are we doing this? What can we do? And it's so many different thoughts thoughts bouncing in as you're saying things, and that's the love of coaching and where you're at. So doing that day to day and doing that after every session can really help take you forward, as well as shape and form your program. And I love what you say about leadership councils as well. I've always looked at, a captain and vice captain of my team as the extension of the coaching team, and that's sort of how we reviewed it. But that leadership council can be a really important point for players to step up, take on leadership responsibilities, those roles, how they communicate, giving feedback, returning it, how they set those expectations. So how do you go about forming a leadership council? What's involved in that then, for just maybe those who are curious whilst you've mentioned that?
Yeah. So what we do, I mean, we have our team vote for two people from each class. And then when we get the most votes per class, we have two people represented of each class. Obviously we make sure they're good with it and they want to be a part of it. But after that, that's how it's formed. And then we have our captains on top of that. What we do with our leadership council is we meet bi-weekly with them. Sometimes it's a quick check-in, sometimes it's a half hour. It just really depends upon what's happening. But a lot of it is, you said it, you have captains, and whatever that number is. This fall we have 3. So we have 3 captains. Like you said, captains are extension of the coaching staff. I completely agree with that. But I also think that is a lot to put on 3 people when you have a team of 30. And so the sense of forming a leadership council is that the leadership council is also an extension of the captains. And so that is, again, all voted on. The team is voted on, leadership council and the captains. Obviously, coaches have say, but you want to respect how the team feels about people and who they want to lead, right? So, or who they want to follow. But that leadership council is an extension. And in my mind, if you think of it as a pyramid, it's you can have captains and then the leadership council and then the team at the bottom. But then if you flip it, because you talk about servant leadership, right? And to have a leg to stand on as a captain or as a leader, you need to show that you want to be down in the trenches with them and that you want to serve them and put them first as humans. So if you flip it, then the captains are at the bottom, the leadership council's in the middle again, and the team's up top. So in my belief, the leadership council is the glue that holds everything together, right? They're the people that communicate with the team. They're the people that help hold people accountable. They're also people that the team feels comfortable going to. If they maybe don't feel comfortable with those 3 captains, they're the glue. And they're the ones that need to be extension of the view and the vision of this program. And if they're not on the same page, then you have glue that's toxic, right? And so forming the people of those leadership councils into the type of leaders that you believe are fit for this team and giving them tools and activities and things to continue building them as leaders. That way, when those captains graduate, you have a solid core that are ready to take over. And then you kind of just keep replenishing it. So it's something that you can do with whatever you want. For us, it's the mindset of all right, if they're our glue, we need to focus a lot on these people and see how we can make sure this team is moving in the right direction.
I think that's brilliant, and I think you ask a lot of questions in terms of that, and how that certainly brings together and forms what could be a really good connection between coaching staff and team, as well as giving opportunity for that servant leadership as well as followership. Because as much as we mentioned leadership, there is such a place for followership, which has such an important aspect in terms of the role that it plays, and for those to step up and really knowing what it is to be a follower. Because again, too many chiefs and less Indians can really cause such a difficult position to be in, whereby you have a lot of people making decisions or stepping up to be part of that and not enough actually forming and following, whereby then if you've got so many people making decisions, then the outcomes are so misconstrued and difficult to follow. Everyone sort of has a say, but it's not really forming or shaping what the program is expected to be or how it looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's too many chefs in the kitchen. There's so many sayings to it, right? And it's you want to make sure that everyone is heard, everyone is valued, everyone is seen. And I think having that larger group that represents each class, that also has the belief and support from the team, as well as the captains. I think they both groups are very, very valuable and influential. And I think that's the main thing is everyone knows this is a really good connector. So if there is something that maybe the remainder of the team just doesn't agree with, they can communicate that maybe with someone from the leadership council, because sometimes being a captain, they don't want the captains to know, because they don't want the captains to possibly say something to the coaches. You just never really know. It's the reality of having college athletics, but having a large group of individuals in one environment, like there's always going to be disagreements, but that's okay. Like that's what grows as a group, and people can have their own beliefs, like 100%. I just want to make sure that our program and the people in it understand and believe that they are heard and that it's okay that they have different viewpoints. And I think that extra layer of leadership and comfortability with the leadership council allows for each of our players to feel that. And it's always something that, even with these different layers, and I think it's something that our captains are very confident saying, and even leadership's confident saying, if someone disagrees and they don't feel like they're being heard, they know they can walk into our coach's office any day and voice it. And I think that's something that is pushed through this entire program, knowing that our doors are always open. So I think that open communication, having the leadership council, allows that and supports that even more too, which is really important.
And it definitely shows that, and it gives great opportunity for those to do so, and form that and be part of that. And whilst you can flip that triangle on its head and look at it in two different perspectives, and really give the onus to how and who is in that top of that triangle, depending on how you've spun it. On that balance and talking about competitive teams and that nature, whilst you're the coach, whilst you're accountable, whilst you're leading the team, you'll have to then expect and deliver those results in terms of the wider stakeholders. So therefore, you could be in a position, in a few years, depending on the team and on the environment, on the competitive nature, and you've got a leadership council whereby they have gained a lot of power and influence. And as people say, within competitive teams, once you lose the dressing room, there's sort of a time ticking clock going on, and that could happen at any point, and that could be consideration for any senior coaches or managers in that position. And whilst they could think, do you know what, forming a leadership council could be a really good way to take this into my philosophy or framework, or take into the team or reform it. Sometimes losing the balance for them just on that consideration could put them in a position. But if you're in that position and say that clock is ticking for Lauren, what would you do to regain that sort of balance and power control with the leadership council, depending on the really competitive high-end teams that you could be working with, for example?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really fair point and fair concern. I think that knowing when we were creating this and having a very strong sense of how we wanted to build it and how we wanted to communicate with them, I think those bi-weekly meetings are really huge in the aspect of feeling that heartbeat and feeling the locker room through the leadership council. These are also people that, same with our captains, before they agree to kind of be a part of this council, we have meetings with them and say, like, these are the responsibilities, these are the expectations. And it's always coming from me as the head coach. It's something that, it's not that I don't want to delegate, but if I'm the leader of the program, I put quotations up there, if I'm the head coach of the program, then, and I'm trying to build leaders, I should be the one leading it, right? I should be the one helping them and growing them and having those conversations with them, in the aspect of also being in the communication of, hey, is this working? How are you feeling? What are your thoughts with it? Always asking questions for them to feel that I really genuinely want to hear their thoughts. And I think, since we've been doing this now for 6 months or so, because we didn't do it the first 2 years, we solidified the fact that we were going to do it this off season. They have felt very comfortable letting me know if they disagree or if they think differently. And as long as I'm showing that respect to them, that I actually hear what they're saying, I think it's keeping that balance. If I'm going to ask them how they're feeling or what their thoughts are, and then I don't even take that into consideration, I do the opposite, then I'm losing their trust and I'm losing their buy-in and I'm losing credibility. So it's making sure that I'm always creating that environment and that platform for them and taking what they say wholeheartedly. Because there's been a couple times already where we've been doing something as a coaching staff, we've asked the council, they give us feedback, and we have changed it. There's also been times where I've asked for feedback, they've given me the feedback, and I'm honest with them if I disagree with them. And then it's my job to make the call. Am I hearing them or listening to them and taking their advice? Or am I sticking with my gut and I'm moving forward in the direction that I saw fit? And I think having those honest conversations and genuinely listening to them, I think helps keep that balance. And if that balance if I'm ever worried about that, then it's up to me to have that hard conversation with them and be prepared to hear the hard stuff that's going to come my way.
I love that, and that just great creates a great aspect in terms of how two different perspectives can be taken on that leadership council, and forms a very great all-round shape in terms of how that may look and be presented. But asking those key questions and that accountability and how you regain control, maybe at some point whereby that may extend depending on that competitive position and the balance of power that may need to be restored, just absolutely sums up what a great position and how you would approach in terms of that leadership council and how that works. So that's great in terms of how you do that and what you're doing as well. So I think it's a fantastic part of what you're doing and how you do it. And you've been chatting about your team, you've been chatting about your players, and it's been really insightful to hear on what you're doing. And this sort of question came up on Saturday during another conversation, and we sort of delved into it. And it's just as the question cropped up, I thought, how would I pose this to you and get another perspective, as that's what it's all about. So the question that came up is, are you coaching a team or are you coaching the players?
That is a really good question. I think you have to be able to coach the players to coach the team. I think that's my perspective. It's tough in the mindset. I think you look at the season in two folds, right? It's like the competitive season, the non-competitive season. I think a lot of people you talk to, they'll look at the non-competitive season and really, really focus on the individuals. But I think that, especially where things have gone for good reason, the type of people that are coming into programs and how people are growing up and their beliefs and feeling confident in themselves to speak or speak about what they feel, what they believe in, who they are as people, just everything that's very different than when I was in college, right? Whereas I think when I was in college, you just coach, this is it, this is the standard, this is exactly what we do. Like, if you don't like it, I don't even want to hear about it. Don't talk to me about it. Don't talk to anybody about it. And just like, keep your mouth shut and go. I'm not saying my coaches did that to me, but I feel like the philosophies has changed getting forward. I think now, at least my belief is that understanding my players individually and how they learn and how they grow and how they develop individually allows me to coach them better as a team. Whereas I could be running a training session and I could coach the team, but I know someone specific needs something just slightly different to get it at the same level as maybe the majority of the team is getting it. So for me to coach the team, I need to know how to coach the individual. And that's how I see it now. Again, there are people that do it much better than me out there, so I would actually be really intrigued to hear their thoughts on it.
I think that's great as well, and I think that provides another great insight in terms of how you reveal that, and in terms of that position which you take as well. And I think on the balance of that, it can also show the position that you're in as a coach. So whether you're the head coach or whether you're the assistant coach, for example, and whether you're transitioning from assistant to head, that's a consideration of how you could be right now in terms of then how you might have staff under you or how you want them to work. Because, you might have an assistant coach, you say, right, I want you to take training today, I want you to focus on this topic, and these are the outcomes that I want you to do whilst I go off and say, meet with the board of directors or whatever. But whilst they're doing that, realistically, it could be a really technical session. So for them, they're not really coaching a team, because the framework around what you're doing in those tactics, you might deploy that and approach that tomorrow in terms of how that may look in terms of the team. But what they're really doing in terms of that topic is coaching the players rather than coaching the team. So, you don't have to take on that full responsibility or think that, it's going to be a total dynamic session whereby you're looking at the technical aspects, because if you're there to focus on the technical because that's been allocated by Lauren, then you are really coaching the players. So then when that transition comes about, you're going from coaching players into coaching that team. So it's that transition and that approach whereby those priorities can change and how you can interlink them in creating a framework whereby you can transition between those roles and what's expected whilst you're within one in terms of where you're going. So I think that again leads in nicely, naturally, in terms of priorities of what you said earlier, and that real aspect and insight in terms of what you just said, whether you were coaching teams or players.
Yeah, I think maybe that's something that was set up early on in my career, because I was an assistant coach, and the coach I worked with at Western when I was the assistant coach really there, and even at State when I started there, I worked a lot with the individual players, and it was something that was my responsibility. And even in sessions, it was, if you need to call somebody out, call somebody out. You need to stop it, like individually. Like, I was just kind of free range, do what you need to do. And so I tended to focus on like the smaller aspects in order to do that. And when you're focusing on the smaller aspects, obviously you're focused on the players. But I think what I've been able to transition that to is I guess my full philosophy of just how I coach is we have a mindset of what we want to accomplish in each session, right? Like you have a topic, you're building things around that, whether it's functional, whether it's tech, whatever it is, you have a topic you're trying to focus on. And is it, my assistant's running that drill, and so that I can poke around and have those small conversations, or am I running the drill and I need my assistant to poke around? But I think it's allowed me as a head coach to be in both roles. But even if I'm just coaching the team, I do tend to watch how it's going, but also know what the individual needs. And that's where like my focus tends to go in how I'm going to make that session better. Is if I can make the individual player in that session better, then the team in general is getting better. And I think I focus on that a lot.
I think that's brilliant, and I love that focus in terms of how you approach that, as well as how that may have looked as an assistant coach to what you do now as a head coach. And whilst you've been talking, it's been a great insight in terms of working out how you approach things, as well as that journey of what you formed and what you do with your team on a day-to-day, as well as how you look at the season ahead in terms of then looking at how that's looked over the last 2 years in terms of that vision over how you want your team to be competitive and what you do with your players. So whilst, reflecting and listening to that whilst you've been speaking, is it a philosophy or is it a framework?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it could be more of a framework now, and the fact that that's how I've been building the program, and how we've been recruiting, and the type of players that want that type of individual development to develop as a whole. So I guess it's definitely is more of a framework, and I think just who I've become as a coach. And I think even when we like adjust things tactically and when I work on things, it's maybe not just the individual, but it's like the individual positions. And when we do film sessions, it's can we pull the holding mids together? So I definitely think it's more of a framework is can we make these players in their roles the best that they can be, and then slowly bring the puzzle pieces together to have it as a whole be successful. So that's a good one. That was a good one. I like that. Thank you for that.
That's
So,
fine,
'cause
no problem.
It's definitely yeah.
I think it's it's great as well, because technically it could be sort of deemed as a philosophy because it's what you've been able to bring and what you bring somewhere else. So if you went in and delivered that, then you sort of, oh right, this is Lauren's philosophy, this is how she does it. But then if we had someone else take over the helm and say, right, this is actually what we want to build upon, it's a framework within the total sense as well. So it's that true balance of what we actually bring, whether we actually want to believe in a framework or whether we believe in a philosophy. And it's such an interesting reflection point which I've had over the last few weeks and sort of months, and as conversations have gone on, whether I've actually formed whether I want the philosophy or have a philosophy, or whether I need one, or whether I actually want a framework in what I'm doing. But whether I offered you a job and said, look, Lauren, I want you to come in, you're going to be my head coach, you've got full resource, you got my full backing, go off, do what you want. You deploy that, you bring in a framework, we start developing, we become more competitive. I'm like, yeah, great, I love what you're doing, I want to see more of this, and then you're able to deploy that, whereby then you start to review and create those priorities in other areas. But whilst you're doing that, you're having that opportunity of what may be called slippage. So that slippage is how you go in about how you're doing it. So I might say, right, you've got any way you want to do it, but I might have an expectation whereby if, Coach Johnny came in, he might have a team of operation whereby he might come in and have it. But your slippage is what you've been able to bring and what you've been able to do. And whilst you've done that, then you're sort of bringing a philosophy in terms of what you want to do and how you want to do it as well, in terms of how you support and develop the program players' competitiveness, and how you bring that forward in terms of that vision on top of what we formed in that environment and culture already.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that I've been in my coaching career. I think a lot of it has been I've been added to programs as a coach that need flipping, I guess you could say. So even at Western Michigan, when I first started there, we were picked to finish last in the MAC, and we come in and we win it, and it's something that I feel comfortable in that environment. It's exciting, I love it. So I guess which you're helping me realize this, so I really appreciate you. It has become something that has been a course of my career, and so from when I started coaching, I've been building this framework and philosophy just because I've always been put in that position, and I feel really comfortable doing that. I think that was one thing I was really excited about when coming to Oregon State, was knowing that this program has had success. It's been up and down, but for it to be consistently successful, we need to change things. And so then I felt really comfortable using my experience to do that and continue doing so. So Makes sense.
I
I
love
like that slippage.
Yeah, slippage. It's a term that I've learned, and it's something whereby, depending on whoever it is or whatever the program is, someone can come in and they can have their impact and be able to shape what they want to do whilst they bring that in. So that could be an aspect of philosophy, but slippage is how you want to do it. So I could have 5 different coaches all delivering the same session, but they might deliver it in different ways. So therefore, that is their slippage upon that, and therefore their contribution to the program, giving that impact and outcome. And it's something which is coming up in a really good study and something that I was listening to the other day, and it's really something that I've brought into play because everyone sort of has that slippage in terms of what they're doing, and it's interesting to see how they go about forming that and what they would bring. And it's great in terms of how you're able to do that and what you're able to do within that position. So it's great in terms of that. So just touching upon that and that slippage and what you've been able to do whilst you were in that position and that team were expected to finish last, but you went on to win it. Did you have to go in and approach the mindset of the team and then really address the maybe issue or concern or the mindset around the fact that they were expected to finish bottom, or did you go in with your framework and your expectations to deliver the program or the quality, which led to then you being successful? How did you go about sort of approaching it?
Yeah, no, we more so approached in the mindset like this is our standard, this is how we're going to train, this is what we believe we're capable of doing, and we're just going to make sure we're doing it every single day. We didn't really, not say we didn't acknowledge the fact that we were picked last, but it wasn't really the topic of conversation. The topic of conversation was, all right, we need to be better, so how we're going to make it better. And it was a lot of our responsibilities, especially as assistant coaches there, to make sure that we were holding the team to that high standard every single day while the head coach, ran a lot. Like, it was our jobs to make sure that we talked about what we want and how we want it to look. And when it's not meeting those standards, we need to make sure the players are getting there. And so that was how we approached it first off at Western when that happened. And I think the same thing happening here is, we talk about what we want it to look like every single day. And I think it's something where, we need to make sure we're holding it to that standard when it's not good enough. But I think now what's even happened, which is really great, because I think it does mean more when it's coming from your teammate than from your coach. And I think where our program is now, what we've been working hard and the players have been working at is when it's not good enough for them, they are making sure that they're holding their team accountable and bringing the team up to a higher standard. And that's something that even at Western, we were able to get the program to that point too with the players. And I'm really happy to the growth that this group has made, especially this off season, to be doing that themselves. And I think that's a really important piece of it to, sustain it and stay successful and be more consistent with it.
I love that, and I think that's great in terms of what the players are doing and that ownership they can have over it as well. As well as hearing that off a teammate rather than a coach at times can really bring so many positives to it. And whilst you went in with those expectations and those high standards, it's not like, as you said, you're not dismissing it, but you are acknowledging it in a way. And sometimes rather than going in and going, right, this was last season, you had X amount of wins, you had X amount of losses, the team didn't perform this, you're expected to finish bottom. Already there, you're building on the mindset of the expectation to finish bottom and underperform, rather than going, right, these are our expectations and this is what we'd like to see and this is what we're going to do. And then you're sort of acknowledging it in a way whereby you are considering it from last year, but you're not putting it at the forefront or bringing it into conversation whereby, players consistently then comparing themselves to last year. And, it allows you then to sort of move forward with a fresh mind and move forward to really be competitive and build upon what the new season looks, whilst going, yeah, you had this last year, but we're not even going to focus on that because we need to look at this year. And I think sometimes too many coaches go in and going, right, this is start a new year, but let's just draw back on last year and let's just draw back on this. And automatically, I think that's putting in a sort of framework of thinking for players whereby they're going to take a few weeks, maybe if not a month or two, to really go, all right, we're not the same team as we were last year, or, even if results then don't start to bode well, then they start to compare themselves to last year, and then you're digging a bigger hole than there really needs to be at that point.
Yeah, no, I think it's really accurate. And I even relate back to when I was a player at State. I think there was something, when my first 2 years at State, we weren't that successful. And then going into my junior and senior year, we became very successful, which was awesome. But I remember after a game my sophomore year, we lost. And I remember turning to my teammate and my coach and talk about my coach was near me, and I didn't realize she was. And I just we lost, I remember turning to my teammate and I was like, I can't go through this again. Like, I can't go through another losing season. And my coach looked at me and she was like, well, you're in control of it. It's like, crap. So, but like, the thing is, like, I was already reflecting on, oh my gosh, it's going to be another miserable year. It's going to be another miserable year of losses and things that, were miserable, and it made me unhappy. And then when she said that to me, like, she's accurate, right? I mean, it is in our control as players. Like, okay, if it's not to the standard you want it, then show up tomorrow and have a better standard for yourself and for your teammates. And that summer, the teammate that I complained to, and myself, and we, a few of us, we just kind of decided, okay, these past 2 years were freaking miserable. What do we need to do differently this summer, going into the fall of our junior year, to make it different? And it was different. Like, we changed how we were training, we changed how we were acting, we changed so many things, because in the end, my coach was right. Stop complaining. It's all in your control. The coaches aren't out there playing. We're giving you ideas. They're helping us. They're guiding us. But like, if we're not going to take, responsibility for what we're doing on the field and what we're doing off the field, then it's going to be another miserable year. So when you think about it now as a coach, from our perspective, especially with us, we just had a crappy year. It was not a fun season for so many different reasons. But if we just keep harping on that, we're just dragging our players down. So it's our responsibility to make sure that they know that we have control over how we can change things, how we can act, how we can adjust to make this fall better than the last. And that is what we're focusing on, how we can adjust to make this fall better. Not think about, this is what we did last fall and it was miserable. It's, we want to make it better every single day. So how are we doing that? And that's what we're focused on, not how crappy last fall was, right? Or anything along those lines. Or even if yesterday's practice was horrible, tomorrow we get to wake up and do it again, and we're going to do it better. And that's what's under our control. And that's, I think, a lot of why we focus on actions, is because in my playing career, I was forced to do that, and it made things so much better. And I think that's something that I can draw back to. And again, thank my coaches when I was a player in helping me shape for who I am, not only as a coach, but as a human. And I think that's what's really allowed me to get to where I am today, is because I approach life like that. And I'm just really grateful that someone called me out. And it was perfect. And I'm going to forever be very appreciative of that.
And I love that. And I think that just shows flipping the script, so whereby then you're going into tomorrow or going into next season, and you can start off on a real positive and building upon that, rather than going on the negatives and then trying to address them to then build upon them. And I think it just sets a new slate, a new opportunity, and knowing that you can go forward and move and really approach that in terms of how you look forward. And whilst you talk about those actions and then sort of those behaviours and then what that looks like in terms of the character and in terms of what you expect from the players and what you expect from your teammates around them, and then those actions which then really define in terms of the high quality, the high expectations, the competitive nature of the team, which then develops that culture and that environment. I think that really builds on sort of an ABC approach, whereby you have the actions, you have the behaviours, you then have the character / culture, depending on how you want to flip that or build it. And I think just having a simple ABC approach for any assistant coach or anyone starting out or anyone reflecting upon how they could improve their program, really, what are your ABCs? What are your priorities? How can you set high expectations? Do you really have to have rules, or are they guidelines? Is it a philosophy or is it a framework? And how are you really instilling that? And how can you build upon a leadership council to take that and then have that ownership to give feedback to players and teammates around them, to then really create that harmony, to then take that forward into a new season and build upon your reflections from last year. So I think what you've done is really built upon a great journey and what you bring to a program, and how you lay that out in terms of what a coach could, should, or could reflect upon doing really nicely within just over an hour, in terms of all your qualities that you bring to the episode, Lauren.
No, I really appreciate you saying those things. So thank you very much. And honestly, this was a really fun conversation. It was refreshing, and I definitely needed it heading into the fall. I mean, we start next week, and yeah, it was just great. Like, thank you for bringing a lot of these things to the table, and for me to even kind of think of, like, I try to reflect, right? You try to be prepared. You try it, but to talk through some of these things, like, I appreciated the reminder. So thank you for your time. It really did mean a lot.
That's right, no problems. I really appreciate you coming on. I can hear you in demand with your teams continuously popping off. So it just shows how much you've got to do and on it. But just before you go, and I'd like to do this with every coach, and I don't want to leave you out. It's just a quick fire questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Smashing. So if you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Oh boy. 3 words that describe me. Reliable, consistent, and quirky, maybe?
That's a new
Something
one.
along those lines, my personality.
That's a new one. I love that though. If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
England.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to be there. My friends are over there right now, and I'm just really jealous of it. They're just having the time of their life, so.
Well, vice versa, we can always swap, and I'll have a ticket out to America. You can have this one over here. I'm in Wales, but I'll set you up for England. That's fine.
Okay, that sounds good.
There you are, smashing. If you could spend the day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
Pep. Easily Pep. Just a brilliant mind. Like, I would have so much fun with him.
I love that, and there was just a little short which I saw on Twitter earlier. They're in Japan playing their pre-season, which they won 5-3 or 5-2 yesterday. And the Japanese media man comes out for the other team, and he's just filming Pep, and Pep's just collared him, and the Pep's just staring at him while this cameraman just films him for a good 30 seconds.
He seems like a blast. Obviously, he's very good at what he does, and just the way he sees the game and how he coaches it, all those things. But he also just seems like a fun human.
Absolutely.
Like, I would just have a good time with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who was or is your role model?
Who was or is my role model? Oh boy, it's a hard one. I mean, I think a person that has really influenced my life is Tammy Farnham, my college coach. Whenever I think of who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing and the way I go about things, I have a lot to her to thank, and so she's definitely someone up there.
They'll certainly love that indeed, and I think she'll take that away, and has been lucky to have you in part of their journey and what they've been able to form and touch you, even whether they meant it or not. But they seem like they're doing a good job, and it's great because they've led to a great Lauren who is doing such a good job. If you had to give a top tip to any coach, what would it be?
Never stop learning. Just never stop learning. Always. About soccer, about life, about who you are. Just never stop learning.
Brilliant. That continues to reaffirm every message, which seems to be consistent right throughout in terms of everyone who's been on the pod. So I think that's great within itself. If you had free reign of taking any job out there, what job would it be in terms of coaching?
Oh, this one I have right now. Can I say that?
Yes,
love it.
I love that
very
one.
Happy.
I love that one. If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
That's a hard one. I think about that all the time, and I'm not sure. It has to do something with working with young people. Like, I just love working with people. I wish I had a title or a specific occupation, but this is what I'm doing right now is my dream. So I'm really happy.
I love that, and I'm glad that you are really happy. Who is your all-time favorite player?
Well, I mean, Michelle Akers was someone that I loved watching, so I'm just gonna stick with Michelle Akers.
Brilliant, love that. What is your biggest pet peeve in coaching?
Pet peeve in coaching? Oh gosh. Can I say my own issue?
Yes.
For some reason, I always say, does that make sense? And when it clearly makes sense, no one needs me to ask it. It's just like a way I wrap up things, and like I catch myself doing it and I can't stop. So it's when I say, does that make sense? When it clearly makes sense to everybody.
I love that, and I can't remember what that is exactly called because I remember working with some coaches whilst I was full-time coaching, and they said everyone had sort of like a little something whereby they might do it. So one of the coaches said that he would always put his hand in his pocket and consistently sort of just scrunch his hand up, and he said that he would do that as he was delivering, and I might have and people do in terms of what they say. So my word is okay, because I go okay, and okay is a point for me to sort of go, right, these are my thoughts and this is what I want to do next. So I seem that if I've recorded myself, I would say it like something like 50 times over an hour, but for me it's just a stop point to move forward.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I when I give like coaches panel stuff, when we do camps, anything, I catch myself saying it for the 7th or 8th time, and then I make sure that the individual knows that I realize I'm saying it, and I just can't stop the habit. So I apologize. I don't think I've said it yet on this, which I'm quite proud of myself if I haven't, but I'm also not coaching, so.
There you are. I love that. What is your favourite thing to do in your downtime?
Well, I have a dog. His name's Reggie. He's so freaking cute. So I love spending time with him. Honestly, just spending time with people, I think is just my favorite thing. I think it's something that People that can bring me back to reality and sometimes get me away from, talking soccer, I think is something that's really special. So just spending that social time with people that help take my mind off of our job, which as much as we think about it and we love thinking about it, it is healthy for us to have a balance. So spending time with my dog and spending time with people that, that are my people.
I love that. What are your 3 non-negotiables in coaching?
3 non-negotiables. Everyone defends. Better defend. I don't care if you're a center forward. I don't care. But everybody defends. That's something that, yeah, you have to do that. Being on time. Like, you just need to be on time. I think that's a priority of everything. A non-negotiable. You gotta be fit. If you want to play at this level, you gotta be fit. So being fit, being on time, and defending. It's just don't mess with me with those things.
Fab, definitely for any upcoming athlete or someone who wants to work with you, definitely consider that. What does reflection mean to you?
Growth. I think it's something that if you're not reflecting on yourself, on the people around you, on how things are going, then you're not growing. So reflection means growth for me.
Love that. Brilliant. And the last one, what is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
The people I get to work with and the people I get to spend with every day.
Perfect. And that wraps up such a brilliant insight into who Lauren is, what she's doing and what she's able to bring, whilst the importance of people and the fantastic nature whereby she has those impact and what she's going to do for the season ahead. Well, I wish you the best of luck for your competitive season starting next week, and it gets back into the normal swing of things. So it is much appreciated, and I'm so glad we could make this happen. And it's been so wonderful to listen to you and definitely scratch the surface with you.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you again. This conversation has been awesome. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise, me too. And well, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. But thank you again from me.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. See you later.
Yeah. Well, that is what's so great about coaching, right? It's like you never stop developing, you never stop learning. And the players you're working with, every year they're also developing, they're changing. There's different type of players that come in, different type of people, which is so fun about our job, right? It's you get to work with such a wide variety of individuals, and that leadership, you just never stop working on it. And you always hear coaches talk about you never stop working on your team's culture. I think as coaches, we can never stop working on us as leaders and how we lead these programs and lead these student athletes. Because once we stop working on ourselves in that environment, how are we expected to properly guide? It's such an important time, I believe, and the person I am today and the type of coach I've become, the type of aunt, the type of daughter, the type of friend, like the type of individual I've become, I really owe a lot of it to how my coaches supported me and pushed me and molded me